Why this is so goddamn hard, the FBI techie complained. Because he's the mastermind, I wanted to yell at him. I saw the Washington Convention Center on the right. The van was really clipping along, doing 60 or 70 on the city streets. We passed the Renaissance Hotel. Where the hell was the mastermind calling from? I think we have a fix on him. We're real close, one of the young agents said in an excited voice. The FBI van stopped, and suddenly it was chaos inside. Samson and I pulled out our guns. We had him. I couldn't believe we had him. Then everyone inside the van groaned and cursed. I looked outside and saw why. I shook my head in disgust. Jesus Christ, do you believe this shit? Samson yelled, and pounded the wall of the van. We were at 935 Pennsylvania Avenue, the J. Edgar Hoover building, which is FBI headquarters. What's happening now? I asked the agent in charge. Where the hell is he? Shit, the signal is roaming again. It's moving outside Washington. Okay, now it's back in the city. Christ, the signal just skipped out of the country. Goodbye, Alex. For now, anyway. As I told you before, you're next, the mastermind said, and then he hung up on me. Chapter 5. The rest of my day was long, hard, and depressing. More than anything, I needed a break from the mastermind. I'm not exactly sure when or where or how I had gotten up the nerve, but I had a date that night. It was with a lawyer for the DA's office here in Washington. Elizabeth Moore was wickedly funny and nicely irreverent. She was a large woman with a really sweet smile that made me smile. We were having dinner at Marcel's in Foggy Bottom, which is a good spot for this kind of thing. The food is French with a Flemish flair. The night couldn't have been going any better. I thought so, and I was pretty sure that Elizabeth would agree. After the waiter left with our orders for dessert and coffee, Elizabeth put her hand lightly on top of mine. Our table was lit by a simple votive candle in a crystal holder. All right, Alex. We've gone through all the preliminaries. I enjoyed the preliminaries, she said. Now what's the catch? There has to be a catch. Has to be. All the good ones are taken. I know that from experience. So why are you still playing the dating game? I understood exactly what Elizabeth meant, but I pretended to look slightly puzzled. Catch? I shrugged. Then I finally started to smile. She laughed out loud. You're what, 39, 40? 42, but thanks, I said. You passed every test I could possibly throw at you. Such as? Such as picking a great spot for dinner. Romantic, but not too romantic. Such as being right on time when you arrive to pick me up. Such as listening to some of the things that actually interest me. Such as being very handsome. Not that it matters to me. Yeah, right. I also like children. Wouldn't mind having more, I added. I've read all of Toni Morrison's novels. I'm a decent plumber. I can cook if I have to. The catch? She asked again. Let's leave it. Our waiter returned with the coffee and desserts, and right as he was pouring a steaming cup for Elizabeth, the beeper on my belt went off. Oh, Jesus. Busted. I looked across the table at her, and I blinked. I was definitely the first one to blink. You mind if I take this? It's important. I recognize the number. The FBI in Quantico. I won't be long. I'll be right back. I went to the restroom area and used my cell phone. I called Kyle Craig in Virginia. Kyle had been a solid friend for many years, but ever since I became a liaison between the Bureau and the D.C. police, I'd seen way too much of him. He kept dragging me into the nastiest murder cases on the FBI's docket. I hated to take his calls anymore. Now what had happened? Kyle knew who was calling. He didn't even bother to say hello. Alex, do you remember a case you and I worked about 14 months ago? A runaway girl was found hung from a lighting fixture in her hotel room? Patricia Cameron? There have been 2 murders in San Francisco that match up. Happened last night in Golden Gate Park. This is a very bad scene, the worst I've heard about in a while. Kyle, I'm having dinner with an attractive, very nice, interesting woman. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll call you. I'm off duty tonight. Kyle laughed. I amused him sometimes. Nana already told me. Your date's a lawyer, right? Listen to this one. The devil meets with this lawyer. Says he can make the lawyer senior partner, but the lawyer has to give him his soul and the soul of everybody in his family. The lawyer stares at the devil and asks, so what's the catch? After he told his joke, Kyle went on to tell me more than I wanted to hear about the similarities connecting the awful murders in San Francisco to the one in D.C. I remembered the victim, Patricia Cameron. I could still see her face. I shook off the image. When he was finished, and Kyle tends to be thorough if a bit long-winded, I went back to join Elizabeth at our table. She smiled ruefully and shook her head. "I think I just figured out the catch," she said. I did my best to laugh, but my insides were already tied up in knots. Honestly, it's not as bad as it looks. It's much worse, Elizabeth. Chapter 6. In the morning, I dropped the kids at school on my way to the airport. Janny is 8. Damon just turned 10. They're really good kids, but they're kids. You give them a tiny advantage, they take a lot, and then they take a little more. Someone, I don't remember who, said that American children suffer too much mother and too little father. With my kids, it's been the exact opposite. "I could get used to this," Janny said, as we pulled up in front of the Sojourner Truth School. Helen for le Sade Ardou, Sade, was singing softly on the CD. Very nice. Don't get used to it. It's a 5-block walk from our house to school. When I was a little boy in North Carolina, I used to walk 5 miles through tobacco fields to school. Yeah, right, Damon scoffed. You forgot that you used to walk barefoot. Left that part out. I did. Thanks for reminding me. I used to walk barefoot through those nasty tobacco fields to school. The kids laughed, and so did I. They're usually good to be around, and I'm always videotaping them. I do it in the hopes that I'll have nice movies to watch when the two of them go bad in their teenage years. Also, I'm afraid I might get CRS someday. The can't remember shit disease? It's going around. I have a big concert on Saturday, Damon reminded me. It was his second year with the Washington Boys Choir, and he was doing really well. He was going to be the next Luther Vandross, or maybe Al Green, or maybe he was just going to be Damon Cross. I'll be home by Saturday, Damon. Trust me, I wouldn't miss your concert. You missed quite a few already, he said. It was a sharp little dig. Well, that was the old me. This is the new and improved Alex. I've also attended several of your concerts. You're so funny, Daddy, Janny said and laughed. Both kids are smart, and smart-ass as well. I will be home for Damon's concert, I promised. Help your grandma around the house. She's almost 100 years old, you know. Janny rolled her eyes. Nana's 80 years young, or so she says. She loves to cook, do the dishes, and clean up after us, she said, imitating Nana's wicked cackle. She truly does. Saturday. I can't wait, I said to Damon. It was the whole truth and nothing but. The boys' choir was one of Washington's secret treasures. I was ecstatic that Damon was good enough to sing with the group, but most of all that he loved what he was doing. Kisses, I said. Hugs, too. Damon and Janny groaned, but they leaned in close, and I wondered how much longer they would be willing to give me hugs and pecks on the cheek, so I took an extra few while I could get them. When the good times come with your kids, you've got to make them last. I love you, I said before I let them go off to school. What do you say? We love you too, Damon and Janny chorused. That's why we let you embarrass us to death in front of our school and all our friends, Janny said, and she stuck out her tongue. Well, this is your last ride to school, I told her. Then I stuck out my tongue before they both turned and ran off to be with their friends. They were growing up way too fast for me. Chapter 7. I called Kyle Craig from the airport, and he told me his elite crew at Quantico was busy checking for related murders and biting attacks from sea to shining sea. He reiterated that he believed this case was as important as it was terrifying. I wondered what else he knew. He usually knew more than he told. Well, you're up early, Kyle, and you're busy. This case has caught your full attention. Why is that? Of course it has. It's totally unique. I haven't seen anything remotely like it. Inspector Jamila Hughes will meet your flight if she can. It's her case, and she's supposed to be competent. She's one of 2 women in homicide in San Francisco, so she probably is fairly good. On the plane trip from D.C., I read and reread the faxes I'd gotten that morning about the horrific murders in Golden Gate Park. Inspector Hughes's preliminary crime scene notes were precise and detailed, but most of all, gut-wrenching. I made my own notes based on hers. It was my kind of shorthand, and I used it on every case I worked. Male and female victims found dead at 3:20 a.m. in Golden Gate Park, San Francisco. Why there? Visit park if possible. Victims hung by feet from oak tree. Why hung? To drain the bodies? Why drain the bodies? Rite of purification, spiritual cleansing? Bodies naked and covered in blood. Why naked? Erotic? Sex crimes? Or just brutal, exposing the victims to the world for some reason? Male's legs, arms, chest severely gouged. Victim appears to have been bitten repeatedly. Male actually died from bites. Female bitten but not as severely. Also cut with sharp object. Died from massive blood loss, class 4. Female lost over 40% of her blood. Small red dots at the site of bindings to the ankles with which victims were hung, called petechiae by the ME. Teeth marks on male appear to be those of large animal. Is that even remotely possible? What animal would attack a jogger in a big city park? Seems far-fetched to say the least. White substance on male victim's legs and stomach. Could be semen. What game were the killers playing? Sadoerotic? I remembered the related case in Washington. How could I forget it? A 16-year-old runaway girl from Orlando, Florida had been found dead and severely mutilated in a hotel room downtown. Her name was Patricia Dawn Cameron. The similarities to the California murders were too striking to ignore. The girl in D.C. had suffered savage bites all over her body. She had been hung by her feet from a hotel room lighting fixture. Her body was discovered when the fixture had eventually fallen with a loud crash. Patricia Cameron had died of blood loss, another class 4. She had lost nearly 70% of her blood supply. The first question was an obvious one. Why did somebody want all that blood? Chapter 8. I was still thinking about the strange, terrible bites and all that blood as I walked off the plane and into crowded San Francisco International Airport. I looked around for Inspector Jamila Hughes. Rumor had it that she was an attractive black woman. I noted that a businessman near the gate was reading the Examiner. I could see the bold headline on the front page. Horror in Golden Gate Park. 2 murdered. I didn't see anyone waiting, so I began to look for signs directing me to public transportation. I only had a carry-on bag. I had promised to be home by Saturday for Damon's concert. I had my marching orders, and I planned to keep all my promises from now on. Cross my heart. A woman walked up to me as I started away from the gate. "Excuse me, are you Detective Cross?" I had noticed her just before she spoke to me. She was wearing jeans and a black leather car coat over a powder blue t-shirt. Then I spotted the telltale holster under her coat. She was probably in her mid-30s, nice-looking, down-to-earth, pleasant for a homicide detective who often come on a little gruff. "Inspector Hughes?" I asked. "Jamila." She extended her hand and smiled as I took it. Nice smile, too. "It's good to meet you, Detective. Ordinarily, I'd resist any idea that originated with the FBI, but your reputation precedes you. Also, the murder in D.C. was awfully similar, wasn't it? So, welcome to San Francisco." "Good to be here." I returned the smile and shook her hand. Her grip was strong, but not overly so. "I was just thinking about the murder in D.C., I told her. Your crime scene notes brought it all back to me. We never got anywhere with the murder of Patricia Cameron. You can add that to the file on my so-called reputation, the one that preceded me." Jamila Hughes smiled again, sincere. Nothing overdone about it. Nothing overdone about her either. She didn't particularly look like a homicide detective, and that was probably good. She seemed a little too normal to be a cop. "Well, we'd better hurry. I've contacted a veterinary dental specialist, and he's meeting us at the city morgue. He's a good friend of the medical examiner. How's that for showing you the sights of San Francisco?" I shook my head and grinned. "Actually, it's exactly what I came out here to see. I think I read about it in one of the tour books. When you're in San Francisco, don't pass up a chance to see the morgue." "It's not in the tour books," Jamila said, "but it should be. It's a whole lot more interesting than any trolley car ride." Chapter 9. Less than 50